Well, good morning, Buff Nation. I know we are spread out not only across the great state of Texas, but the United States and around the world as well. Canyon, Texas this morning, misty, a little hazy outside, 48 degrees here on May 11th. Supposed to be in the 90s 2 days from now. But what matters most is we are joined by the coach on the WT athletic staff with the longest tenure, Mr. Butch Lauffer. This fall, 2020, will be the start of his 30th season as the head men's soccer coach at West Texas A&M University. Back in 2017, September 30 to be precise, he reached the 500 win plateau, and he is currently the 10th winningest active coach with the 9th most victories among active coaches in all of Division II. He ranks 22nd overall among D2 men's soccer coaches with 341 career victories. Back in 1993, before some of our players were probably born, it was his third season at West Texas A&M, and at that time, the Buffs recorded the 9th most goals in NCAA Division II history, scoring 94 in a single season, and the third most goals per game, just under 5 at 4.95. Butch not only coaches soccer, but he's devoted to teaching the game of soccer. He's written 3 books about coaching and player development. He has also created 2 3-disc DVDs that describe how to implement various game tactics and coaching techniques regarding the game of soccer. Coach Lauffer is also the director of soccer for the Amarillo Drifters Soccer Association and is a member of the North and South Texas Olympic Development Program. He's a graduate of TCU back in 1985. I graduated WT, so that kind of puts us on a level when it comes to experience. But welcome aboard, Butch. Glad to have you with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
I know strange times this spring as far as off-season training and conditioning, but give us a little update on the state of the Buffs men's soccer program right now regarding what you can do, how you reach out to your kids, conditioning, that kind of stuff.
Well, we were this year. We had Coach Crowder and I. We'd implemented the spring program to start earlier than we have in the past. We felt that because of the nature of the squad, we wanted to try to start as early as possible to get going and allow us get the kids on the field earlier and then get them longer in the weight room over the spring period of time. And looking back on it, it was a really positive decision for us because traditionally a lot of college spring seasons may not start on the field until maybe around or before, right after spring break. And so we were well within our way and had played a couple spring games and stuff. And we felt it was going really positive. We have kind of a young group, and we could see definite signs in the weight room with improvement of their speed and agility, and just everything was going really great until the virus hit. So we were lucky in that regard that we were further ahead, I think, than maybe a lot of other college programs traditionally were at that time because of our early start date. So I know some programs didn't even get on the field and weren't able to have any spring games and stuff like that. So we've been pretty positive with that. So we feel lucky with that. Next is we've been kind of reaching out our routine have been coming in every Monday morning and getting on the phone with all the players and just checking in with them on the phone, how they're doing, how their grades were doing, what they were doing on and off the pitch, just to try to help. Really major concern was their mental health. They're all young, and so we worried about them not getting sick, but just making sure they're positive and lose focus on the academic side and things like that. So that's been really positive. And then Coach Crowder has been really positive with sending out, just email communication with the players in terms of, fall, summer training program, what's going on, what are we doing, and just staying in touch with the players that regard. And so it's been a pretty positive regard. And we just got off 2 days of Zoom calls this morning, just going through with the kids today and yesterday, going through their spring grades, and pretty happy with that so far. It looks like we're going to have 5 guys with 4.0, so that's really positive, the right direction. So it's, and then, you just try to be creative sometimes and try to, we've been asking us, send us videos of things that they've been doing. And, we had them do the toilet paper challenge and things like that, just to try to keep them engaged. And we're getting them to send us some videos of them doing stuff with the ball right now, and that we can post and send out. And like I said, just to try to keep them engaged. And hopefully, I think the biggest thing is just to make sure they feel that they have hope that there's going to be a fall season, which I believe we're going to have a fall season. And but I'm a little bit older than them, and just trying to make sure we project a very positive attitude. And I think that's been easier for us to do because of the attitude and the aggressiveness of the athletic department, of Mr. McBroom and Dr. Windler, our president, and the approach they're taking to this pandemic.
We'll talk about your fall schedule in a moment, but you mentioned James Crowder, your assistant. Very hands-on, and you seem to have a lot of trust and faith in him. Talk a little bit about what James brings to your program.
He brings so much to our program. He is, first of all, he's very passionate and very, very high work ethic, and he helps push me to be better. I think that's the biggest thing. And I've told him that he's made me a better coach and a better manager. And, he's turned into a really great friend as well. And so he's committed to WT, he's committed to the players. He's committed to the cause, and probably he's kind of quiet when he talks about himself, but he just finishing his master's degree here at WT as well. And so I couldn't be happier to have him on staff, and he's been a huge, huge, huge benefit to our program.
Now you look at your fall game schedule. I know so much is in flux, up in the air. It changes week to week, but
yes, sir.
What can you tell us about the schedule? What do you know? I mean, we've heard that, especially non-conference wise, some schools are in limbo as to whether they're going to travel or allow teams from outside to come in. Athletics is so much pre-planning and advanced work, and it's hard to do right now.
It's very hard. I'm usually by now, Coach Waldron here on the call. Way by now we've had all our travels done, hotels done. All those type of things are kind of done, and I feel kind of like I'm up in the air because I want to get that stuff done. And every time I think I'm at a point where we can do those type of things, then it changes. We're scheduled to go to Seattle and Western Washington this fall, but I don't know if that's going to happen. We're supposed to open up with Colorado Pueblo down here. Don't know if that's going to happen. There's a lot of talk, Kent, about obviously with the Division II level with some reducing contests across the board. And I know Mr. McBroom is, leading the charge on fighting that and trying to not allow that to happen for these kids. Because, a lot of the seniors last spring lost a lot of, games and stuff. And we don't want to for that to happen again to anybody else if we can, afford not to do it. And so, there's a lot of talk amongst the conferences of maybe just playing conference schedule only with no non-conference games and things like that. So it's really, really, really wide open. And as you know, Kent and Casey, that the Management Council, I believe, meet on the 15th to discuss it, and the President's Council meets on the 19th. And from what I understand, there's a new survey going out from, I guess it's Management and President's Council to all the athletic directors of Division II to kind of get the feeling of where they stand right now, with the particular topic of reducing contests for the fall. So it's some of the kids asked us today where where the season stood, and we just said, it's so fluid. We just, I feel confident we're going to have it. I just don't know what and how many.
Okay, as we've done on our previous coaches Zooms, we encourage questions from BuffNation out there. All we ask is that don't take this the wrong way. The official just called a foul on you. You got to raise your hand, let them know who it is that has a question. Also, you can do you can type out your question in the group chat if you would like, and I will get it into Butch as we go along. Butch, before we go to our questions, you've had so many players over the years that have been successful, and many of them have chosen to follow your footsteps in the coaching profession. Your coaching tree, Davey Arno was very successful in MLS, and he served as interim head coach of the Houston Dynamo last year. Seb Furness is down with the LSU program. Paul Hart's in Washington. And Omar Morales, who was over at Eastern New Mexico, is now the head coach of the Houston Dash. Talk a little bit about some of those guys that have gone on to the coaching profession.
Well, there's a few, some more. You've got Ben Waldron there. He's the associate head coach at University of Pittsburgh. You've got Eric Sorley, who's running his own youth club. Was a graduate assistant with John Leamy over at Southwest Missouri State. You've got Bo Brown, who's the director of Sting down in Austin, that maybe Randy might do a little recruiting with. Who knows? You got Reese Barden, who's on the screen there, that's been coaching, in Midland and Houston and club scene and everything. And so, it's a compliment. You hope that, to me, what it says a little bit is that they had at least a positive experience, that that they want to continue that process and help. And then, I look back and making sure that maybe hopefully that I didn't screw them up and make their college soccer experience a bad experience, and that they wanted to continue and to continue down that path. I think one of the common denominator of all those people that you mentioned, that I mentioned, is that they're super, super passionate about the game, and we're all really, really good players, and they just want to continue down that path and help expand the game in our country. And a lot of those guys have some professional experience, playing experiences, and they bring something back to the table that a lot of other people can't. And so we've been very fortunate, and a lot of them have ended up on the lady side. So that's good too. So they're all really damn good coaches.
And you mentioned, as we look at 25 participants here on our Zoom call today, a good number of them are alumni of your program. May or may not have played here since the pitch has been around, but over the last year, you've made, or the university has made, some great improvements out there on the field and the locker room. Why don't you tell us a little bit about
sure.
Ability-wise?
Eric could contribute. I don't know when the last time he was down here, and Coach Waldron was here many times for our international courses when we had the 3 grass fields and everything that had the hump. And in the spring, the kids would come off with grass burns because the grass was so dry and everything. And then, through Mr. McBroom and Dr. O'Brien's, leadership at the time, we built the $22 million sports park that at the time, can you please correct me, but at the time was the largest AstroTurf or facility in the country, just per square footage of AstroTurf, where we had, the men's and women's soccer field, the 2 football/soccer practice fields, the championship baseball and softball facilities, and the 3 intramural softball pitches. So, and then this year the school came in and spent another $650,000 on putting in new artificial turf for us. Same stuff that Real Madrid uses at their training facility. And we're about 18 months in, Kent, to the new locker room facility, and that was really exciting because the athletic administration allowed James and I to have some input on how to design it and do some things, and so it's come a long way since the first year where we dressed in the back of the old PE locker room out there in the middle of the field, Kent, and had to stop the groundskeeper from using diesel to cut the lines in instead of paint the lines in the first year. So it's come a long way.
All right, who has questions for Coach Lauffer? Talk Buff soccer. No, there's got to be somebody out there.
All right, good. Lunchtime. See ya.
We got a question here from Sean, Coach. First, he says, great to see you. Class of 94 and 2000. He took your soccer class. we talked about Davey Arno being successful in the MLS. He was wondering if you could tell us some of your other players that have gone on to be successful in the professional ranks.
Well, obviously, you have Davey. In that class that year, when Davey came out in 2001, you had Davey was a 5th-round draft choice with Dallas. With Kansas City. And Jeremy Piet was a 5th-round draft choice with Dallas. Ben Waldron was on that team, and he left to go on to pursue professional ranks in Denmark and Mexico at that time. That team was very special, kind of put the group on the map. And then from there, we had Seb Furness was a goalkeeper who you mentioned, now the assistant at LSU. He spent some time, first of all, in Middlesbrough's academy, and then went on to play professionally in Iceland, and then also spent some time coaching there for a while. And then Dom Furness actually came for 3 years and then left, and he had a very, well, he still is, a distinguished playing career in Iceland and Sweden and England and Australia and the Far East. Then 2 years ago, he called me and Kate and said, "Hey, I want to come back and finish my degree." And so he needed about 15 hours, so he came back and we helped him get through the fall and finish his degree. And then and while he was there, he actually acquired a wife here, and he's now in Australia playing. And then he also has the distinguish of actually being, as far as I know, the only ex-Buffalo player playing a Champions League game in Sweden. So Bo Brown played with the Sidekicks, Utah Freeze, Tampa Bay Mutiny in the first year of the old MLS, and Bo won a couple of indoor championships with them. Lance Lindbergh played in one of the early indoor leagues and won a championship with Lafayette team out of Lafayette, Louisiana. I'm sure I'm forgetting a couple others, but we've been very fortunate, and we've been very fortunate, and we've been very fortunate that I haven't screwed them up while they've been here.
Cooper Cawley has a question, and it's very appropriate. With the pandemic going on now, club sports aren't playing, the high schools aren't playing. What's your recruiting process look like for the upcoming season?
Well, we were, again, the motto this year for us was do everything early, and we were lucky. We were well, I would say finished, but we were pretty close to being finished in the recruiting process. So most of our recruiting time has been spent on just following up on the nuts and bolts of applications, transcripts, NCAA eligibility center, making sure they're getting their stuff. Are they requesting their amateurism? Now working on getting the final transcripts, for the true freshmen, housing, all that kind of stuff. So we were lucky. I know maybe some people at our level weren't as lucky because at this level the foreign student plays a large factor into a lot of the teams, and I think it's going to, nobody really knows, but I think it's going to, a lot of these kids, I think depending what country they are coming out, the first time we're going to have a hard time getting into the country because of lockdowns and lack of flights and people maybe not even accepting them to come in yet, and then the quarantine factor. So those are some of the unknown things, but we've been very fortunate. And so like I said, we were lucky this year in that regard.
Okay, questions for Coach Lauffer? Such a silent group.
It's before noon, kid. Come on.
I got you there. Randy Waldron has a question for you, Butch. You brought David Moyes in last summer. Any plans for another international clinic?
Well, we were full steam ahead. We were working with Dave and a couple other people, and we were working on that. And then all this, kind of popped up, and this kind of put a damper on it because, as Randy knows, we have fun doing it. We brought in some really interesting people, and every time you bring somebody in, you learn something. It's been really positive, and so we'll see kind of what happens. I have kind of tinkered with the idea of maybe having something later in the summer if the environment allows us and see, but that's, we might have to put it off for a year, but definitely been thinking a lot about it for sure.
And a question about the overall program comes in. He says, how is the general funding for your soccer program, and how many scholarships can you offer?
Well, we're fortunate in terms of the overall, just the M&O of our budgets, for men's soccer. We've been very, very blessed in those areas. We've been very blessed also in the last, I don't know how many years to be what we call would be fully funded kit, which Division II is 9 full athletic rides. As many of our audience would know, is that doesn't mean you get to offer 9 full rides every year. That's a total number that you're dealing with, and that number that that you can offer per year is going to differ based on how much money you already have invested in your current squad and everything. So we're very blessed now. What we don't know, and is like everybody, I'm sure everybody's going to have to tighten their the belt buckles a little bit this fall and see kind of where it all falls and everything. And but I learned a long time ago there's 2 type of accountants out there. There's the type of accountant that wants to cut expenses, and there's the other type of accountant that wants to raise revenue. And I think WTs are surrounded by the second type of accountants that we're trying to find ways to increase revenue dollars across the board for everybody. And that's can be challenging, but it sure is, to me, it's a much more healthier attitude to work in than the other one.
And Sean Massey is on the forum here, and he's got a question for you. Sean, let's unmute, and you can talk to Butch Lauffer.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there you
Yes,
go.
sir.
You're good.
What
Sean,
advice? Yeah. What
Go ahead,
advice would you give to young coaches to be successful?
I think the biggest thing right now, well, not right now. I think the biggest thing as young coaches is first of all is you got to have an open mind, and you've got to be willing to try to pick people's brains and steal ideas, and you go through that process of kind of formulating your own philosophy over the period of time. I think the next thing is in today's world, even at all levels. I mean, you see it now, even at the pro game now, where you see diversification of the staff per se. In the old days, you would have like a manager and coach, and that person would coach the team, pick the team, pick the hotel, be involved in the transfer market, all those things. And now you're seeing more diversification of the staff and the jobs. And so I just think at our level, we wear so many different hats that I think if you could have some really basic good education in the soccer side, some basic good solid education on the sports science side, and then some which to me would also obviously in that area include a lot of psychology as well, because it's so much of it is motivation and dealing with people and players and in that regard. And then having some education in the business side in terms of, budget planning and marketing and those type of things. Because, one of the fun parts of this job is, yes, sometimes we don't do as much soccer as we'd like to, but we get to do a lot of other different things in terms of, trying to find ways to improve our program, and whether it's through sports science and the expansion in those areas, but also, finding ways to help improve the brand of your program, whether, it's marketing, putting people in the seats. Obviously, the social media thing has been a big deal, and that's one thing that Coach Crowder's really driven for us, is to really improved our footprint in the social media area this year, or not this year, but overall in terms of just, Twitter and Facebook and all those things, and trying to get that out and expand that. And it's today, you have to evolve. If you don't evolve, then you're going to become extinct.
Questions for Butch Lauffer Talk Buff Soccer here. Casey, go ahead.
Okay.
Okay, but so you've coached for some time, and I know in my short little stint of coaching, you know, there seemed like there was a team that kind of stuck out over your 30-ish years or so. Is there a team looking back that really just kind of stuck out to you as not necessarily a favorite team, but a team that may have had that extra little bit that, you know, maybe didn't come to fruition, but you know, you think back and that's a team you really remember?
Wow. It's a great question, Casey. So I appreciate you calling me old nicely there. I think there's a couple groups, you know, I mean, you know, the first year's team was always special because we had such a short period of time to formulate it and get it on the field. And, you know, at that point, you know, and myself and the players are too young and naive to understand what it might look like from 30 years, you know, back, you know, that they created history to start something like that. That group of players we had in like 99, 98, 99, 2000, 2000 was this really special group because it really helped put the program on the map. So really close to a lot of those guys, and you know, and really just glad to see they're all doing so well, you know. That group in I think it was 2007 with the Furnace brothers and Ben Everson and Caleb Christensen and Nicky and those guys, and Paul Hart was a really special group. You know, they had a great run, and then the team a year and a half ago, you know, had a great run. They were a bunch of great kids. And, that was a fun group because when we graduated that group, we had 8 seniors, and they would all come in as a freshman and work their way through. And you could see just the maturation process of the group and how they evolved and got better. And, you know, there's, as all the players and coaches know that are on this call, you know, the room for margin in our sport is so small, you know. What one little thing can tip a game, you know, in the opposite direction that you really have no control over. And to me, that's really the challenging thing that we have is we have a certain amount of time during the practice period to get the things hopefully right on the field. And then once the whistle blows on a Thursday night or a Saturday afternoon or a Friday night and a Sunday afternoon, a lot of times it's really out of your control, you know, and you just hope that, you know, they can get through it and do a good job and stuff. So those teams are special, you know, and, you know, and we've been lucky, you know, the majority of them all gone on to do really, really great things in their private life. And I'm really proud of all of them.
Butch, so many of the kids that you've mentioned have been 4-year players, and that seems to be the way that you have built your program. Talk a little bit about the philosophy that you put into building your roster. You mentioned the kids being here, staying here, developing, and then going on to success later on.
Yeah, I think it's you know, in our sport, I think it is changing a little bit. I think, you know, when I first started, it was more of a 4-year type of process or 5-year type of process. Kids will come in as freshmen and, you know, these little immature, skinny guys, and you've got to help become bigger and believe in themselves and see the physical, mental maturation process. You know, they I don't know if all the coaches on the call would agree or disagree with me, but I still think, you know, that the level of the college level gets a bad rap. I think it's a much higher level than people give it credit for. And so for the kid coming in as a true freshman, I think it's much more challenging than they think it is in terms of the speed of the play and the intensity of the play and, you know, the training regimen of every day and, you know, having the coaches demand perfection from them all the time if they can, you know, in the classroom and off the, you know, the field. And so But over the last few years of Division II, you're starting to see more of the shift change towards maybe four-year programs going out and getting a few more junior college kids or graduate kid students. It's been a big change in our environment, where they can bring in this maturity of those kids, or an experience level is so much greater of a third year or fourth year graduate student come in and play in, and it's almost a little bit of a kind of a mercenary type of approach. But I think what we've tried to do is blend the both. Try to build the core of the program around 3 and 4 year students, because it gives you stability. I think it helps with your alumni base. I think it helps with them becoming much more committed to the school and that indoctrination process, which I think as all schools rely upon. They all do it differently, but that's their long-term survival of schools. Especially using athletics, is to create that alumni base for giving down the line, and then then trying to find a few junior college kids with experience to fill some maybe immediate needs and things like that to help maybe meet immediate impact, but also just some leadership as well. Because that gap between an 18-year-old, true 18-year-old, and maybe a 22 or 23 or 24-year-old is a big gap. Physically, mentally, and on the field. So we've kind of gone a little bit of the combination now, Kent, to try to keep us competitive at the regional, national level.
Who has a question for Coach Lauffer? All right, Paul Sweetgall. Going to talk clients here. Be careful.
No. Paul,
How are you, Butch?
I'm good, Paul. We have all our stuff turned in, Paul. Don't worry. We have it all turned in.
All right, you're okay so far, so I'll stay off of that side of it. Right.
I appreciate it.
Let's just look ahead to the fall. Obviously, we're optimistic. We're looking forward to seeing you in the middle of August. As the other question referred to earlier, though, there's been no spring competitive season. There's been no summer leagues. So what will it take to get people game ready when they come in the middle of August? Or, knowing you, do you have a scrimmage scheduled that very first day of practice?
Yeah, we've got the old Cooper test first thing of preseason, Paul. See if we can crush them the first day. So anyway, it is a worry, because of selfishly for us, our spring was going so well, and Coach Crowder works really hard a lot with helping the kids on the current roster help find places to play in the summer, and all that right now has kind of gone out the window. They all have now summer programs that our strength and conditioning program, Derek Kennedy has produced and we've sent out, and so we kind of took worst case scenario there with the fact that we kind of planned two deals where if they had access to gym, if they had access to no gym. And so we made sure that they had programs they could do either way. And so that's been positive. Again, talking to all the players on the Zoom calls today and yesterday, they're all getting antsy. They are all going out and doing stuff on their own. And so, we just think that trying to get the players to come in early for captain's practices and just is going to be critical if they allow us to do those things. We have still so many unknown obstacles that we have to overcome. Because as the coaches will know on the call is, you can do all the running and lifting and stuff, but still not being soccer fit and game fit and stuff like that. And there's only one way to get that, and that's by playing. And so, obviously, as a coach and, you're preparing your team, the thing that you don't want to do is unnecessary injure them during the preseason because you're doing too much and things like that. So it's going to be a challenge for all the teams, all the fall sports to figure out how hard to push and how much to not push and see. And then the other thing is everybody's body is different. There's not just one metrics that you can use to say, okay, well, this is going to fit everybody. So that's going to be a challenge. And I think between Coach James and myself, I think, we're smart enough we can figure that out and get the guys through that and get them up to game speed as safely as possible. And I think that's I think it'll require a little bit different preseason than maybe normally in the past.
Questions for Butch Lauffer? All right, Butch, I'm going to have you go into your Wayback Machine just a little bit. In that, at one point, you were overseeing both the men's and the women's soccer programs, and you talked just a moment ago about the guys' different personalities, different attitudes, all that. When you were coaching the women's program, what challenges did you face trying to have two different programs, two different genders, give them equal opportunity and develop? And you did, because both programs were very successful.
Well, thank you, Kent. Well, at the time we were, if we did really, first of all, you have to thank the athletic administration, because they gave us, really the proper staffing that's required to handle something like that. You just, no way you can do it by yourself or with one assistant or one graduate assistant. There's just no way you can do that. And so that's first. Second of all, when I was asked to do it, I just told both genders that I would work my rear end off to make sure that they never felt that they never got the most out of me, and that they felt that they would never be slighted. And I think we did that. And then the other thing is I think what we did is I worked on the premise that they had one coaching staff, but they were two separate programs, and they had separate needs at different times, and during the season and during the maturation process of the program. They were growing at different speeds and different ways, and so at least I tried to address those needs and try to look at it from a separate perspective of what each team needed at that time, and we kind of went about that. Most of our teams kind of played the same way, but we went about differently in teaching the process to them, because the genders are different in terms of the learning process that we learned. So that was interesting. That was fun to try to figure out that nut and how to crack it and get the information across. One of the things that I enjoyed coaching about the ladies is once you were able to convince them that you were on their team, they would run through a brick wall for you, and they were fantastic. And so, there's no doubt there's difference in the genders in terms of the teaching process and their attitudes, and you learn that they have different needs. And I guess one of the early on falseness that I learned was that I thought that the ladies would eat less than the guys, and that wasn't the case. They would sometimes put the guys to shame on the road in terms of their diet, what they wanted, and they were a lot more sneaky about trying to figure out per diem money and say, well, if we save up our money here, we can get chicken fingers and then we can get a dessert or whatever. And the guys were going, just take us to Golden Corral, whatever, we can eat as much as we can. So it was fun. So sorry, Brett.
You can draw on a lot of experience there.
Yeah.
Let's see. Questions for Coach Lauffer? Go ahead, Casey.
Okay, so I always ask some random question. And one thing that I've noticed over the past couple of years, actually attending the soccer games, and it's pretty evident on this from some of the alumni and other people, what is the evolution of the soccer hair? I feel like I haven't seen one soccer player that hasn't had great hair, and you've got pretty good hair still, Butch. And judging by some of the photos I see, there's some pretty good hair going. Has that always been a thing since the 90s, that soccer's just grow up naturally with good hair, or what's the deal?
Randy, you want to answer that one? I don't, Casey. You should go back to look at some of those pictures in '91 with some of the hairdos that team had. It was like an extended large rock band had converged on Canyon, Texas, with some of the hairdos, and a couple had some earrings at that time and everything. And it's. Yeah, I mean, I would hate for you to see some pictures when I was playing in the '70s and saw how long some of my hair was at the time, and those things. But it's, I don't know. I think it's the nice hair and then the nice legs for the ladies. I think is what seems to be the attraction for the players.
All right, that's a question for Coach Lauffer. Talk anything from hair to soccer.
Or legs.
Coach, earlier we had a question about funding for your program. You have one of the more innovative fundraising efforts each year in your hat trick dinner. Why don't you talk a little bit about that? I know a lot of our viewers today have attended that, but for those of us who haven't, talk a little bit about that, because that's a very involved event.
Yeah, it's an involved event, and I can't take credit for the idea. That was Coach Harrison way back when, some odd years ago, when he was here helping me, and actually he stole it from his girlfriend who was working for the Cancer Society, and that they put on an event similar to that. And he came back and said, "Hey, I got a great idea for us to do a fundraising dinner." So it was his idea, and we've just kept it rolling. But it's we have it not usually. We have it every spring, except for this year. We've had to put it on hold, and that's been one of the debates in the office of whether to try to have it maybe in the summer, depending if this things get lifted, or maybe during the season, or I don't know. We still don't want to let it die. But it's the event where we first of all, we have very, very we think interesting speakers that we bring in to help talk, and actually Coach Waldron has spoken once or twice. And he's got a really nice silverware trick that he does at the table. So, when he was at Notre Dame, he spoke a couple times at our dinner. So I think that's one, is you bring in somebody that's is going to be fun with the group and can interact with the group. I think that's really important. Two is then I spend time hounding people across the country and the world to send us items that we can auction off to help raise money. And we've had some really, really cool things, from signed jerseys from Bayern Munich to Manchester United to signed jerseys from ex-players and stuff. And then on top of that, we try to have a really good meal, and then we use the players as our waiters to serve serve the food, and then we get them to try to get them to interact with their tables, and it becomes kind of a contest between table and player to see who can raise the most tip money based on their service and what they're doing. So it's turned into a great evening, and it's one of those things you love doing, but you're also glad when it's over every year too.
And there haven't been any major mishaps.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Audio, you had a question for Coach Lauffer.
Hey, yeah, this is Miguel.
Hey, Miguel.
Hey, Butch. I was just wondering, how do you see the future of U.S. soccer here? I mean, you've been involved for so many years. You've seen the challenge. You see many players, many kids playing. Obviously, the U.S. women's program being tremendously successful.
Yep.
Men's side, unfortunately, they were not able to qualify to the World Cup.
Right.
And then the succession planning with the coaches, and now some trouble, it seems like, with the U.S. Soccer Federation.
Yeah.
How do you see that, and how does that affect maybe people going into play college and wanted to play professionally?
Well, that could, Miguel, that could be a Zoom call by itself. There's a lot there. I think if you look at it if you look at it from two perspectives, one from the ladies' side, I think the ladies' side is much more healthier than the men's side right now. They've been obviously at the senior level, they've been very successful. And we've, as a country, been continue to be able to introduce young talent into the youth national teams and the senior team. So I think that's a positive. I do think there's a little bit of unknown with them, a little bit with the DA and that changing, and there's some uncertainty there. Sorry, that was my A. So anyway, the feed just went up. Yeah, sorry. On the men's side, I think there's much bigger issues. I think one is it starts with the leadership at the top. And I'm not so much, when I say that, I don't mean really the president of U.S. Soccer, but maybe we really don't have a director of coaching anymore, like we used to when Randy and I were involved, and we had a director of coaching that kind of would set the agenda and do some and initiatives. So I think that's one. Second of all, I think at some point, I think you have to look in the mirror and say, you know what you are. And if you look at our men's senior teams over the past that have been the most successful, they may not have been the most easy on the eye, but they had certain qualities that they were always involved in that team. They were always hardworking. They were always super organized. They had that togetherness that they were going to fight for each other and play for each other, and that they had the confidence that they thought they could win and go win games in tough environments. And I think the people in charge of those teams at the time recognized what the strengths and weaknesses of that group was, and didn't ask them to do things they're not capable of doing. And I think that's one thing that, even in my own philosophy, especially the college game, because the time is so short sometimes, is we get sometimes too worked up about what the players can't do instead of what the players can do. And I'll say, okay, let's make sure we're setting them up to be successful, not setting them up for failure by asking them to do things they're not capable of doing. And so I think with over the last maybe 10 years, we've been trying to create this artificial style of play that I don't know that no matter what we do, we can ever create it, because you are what you are. To say that you want to be the Spanish, play like Spain or Argentina or whatever, I mean, you have to think about that. Those cultures, that soccer culture and those styles have been evolving for years and years and years and years, and there's a cultural aspect to that. And I think for us, that hurts us, because you have a country that's the size of Europe, bigger, when you add Russia to it, it's been comparable. And then you have such a large diversity of people, that the game is a little bit different on the West Coast than it is in the Midwest, than it is in the South, than it is in the Northeast, the upper Midwest. It's a little bit different, a lot of it's based on the early heritage of the people that moved into those areas. I mean, there's a reason why there's the Greek Americans in San Francisco. There's a reason why there's the Bavarian Club in Milwaukee. There's the reason there used to be the Longhorns in Dallas and Sting. There's a reason why, you had the Blackwater Chargers in Florida, and the Boston Bolts, and they all have kind of their own identity. And so I just think that we have to accept who we are and build on those strengths and take that to a new level. Do we have some special players coming through? I think there's a couple, but there's not enough, Miguel, that's for sure. And that's discouraging based on our overall population base dramatically, but on the flip side, it's you just can't snap your fingers and produce a world-class player. It takes time. I do think that there is some. I'm not totally sold on the total MLS Academy program, to be fair. I think that's in some ways it's too diluted in some areas, and I think that the only teams that should have a true academy on the boys' side are the MLS teams. Period. Because they have the infrastructure, they have the facilities, and then my next thing is I would put all those teams into a regional league playing the USL teams or USL2 teams, not just the average youth teams that you see right now. And so I would do those type of things. And then also, Miguel, what's hindering that is MLS as a whole has, if MLS is going to be the primary producer of players for the national team, then MLS teams they're in the business of winning, and you know, and their budgets are different, and they can go. Some teams can buy different level of players than some others, and so that now is starting to block the path of young Americans of getting opportunities into those teams. You know, unless the club has a philosophy if that's where we're going to draw our players from. As an example, in FC Dallas or whatever, you know. But at the end of the day, are they going to be good enough to win you a championship? And I think that's where, you know, it's you've got to think there's an issue there as well, you know. And then I don't agree with a lot of the young Americans going to Europe and then sitting on the bench. You know, if you go to Europe and sign a contract and you sit on the bench, to me you're better off coming back here and playing every day. You know, now if you can get into the team and play, and great. But to go there as a 17, 18-year-old and sit on the bench and not getting games, to me, you're wasting your time and everything like that. And just because say that I'm at Dortmund or whatever, you know. So to me, yeah, it's discouraging at times, you know, from a soccer perspective and a soccer person, it's discouraging. But I just think there's no magic formula. But again, I think it all comes back to being honest with yourself and saying, hey, we are what we are. And let's figure that out first. And let's build upon that. And let's fit the players to get the players into that. And, you know, as all the coaches on the call know, is that you've got to have the right balance between the piano players and the piano carriers.
Time for one more question if we want to do it. And with that, we will wrap up this week's or today's Coaches Zoom. Butch, thank you for joining us. Your love not only for the program and your players, but the game of soccer overall is very evident. I know we at WT, as well as everybody that's on the call today, appreciate what you do for soccer and everyone as individuals. So thanks again for joining us.
You're welcome. Thanks for having us.
Coaches Zoom will be this Thursday. We'll keep it on the pitch. Chad Webb will be on board. We'll discuss Lady Buff soccer. That'll be this Thursday at 11:30 a.m. Until then, everybody, stay safe.
Thank you very much.
Safe. Go Buffs.